All right. Well, hello, everyone, and thanks for being here. It's a real treat for me to be here with you today, and to share with you one of my favorite topics. And a great one that's very fitting as we celebrate the 60th anniversary of Aquinas College this year. So let's go ahead and begin with a prayer. Let's entrust all of this presentation, the past and the present and the future of Aquinas College and its students and all of its faculty and staff, to the intercession of Our Lady as we pray together. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen. Saint Dominic, Saint Cecilia, Saint Thomas Aquinas. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Come on in. As I said, I'm so pleased to be able to kick off St. Thomas Aquinas week with you all by sharing with you some of the fruits of some study I did several years ago at this point. In the summer of 2016, I was studying at the Catholic University of America, and we had a great class on the history of Catholic education. And so for one of the assignments we had, and Dr. Rebecca Hamill was in that class with me, so I'm happy to have her here with us. But at that time, we had a great assignment. We were to write a history of a Catholic educational institution that had never had a history written of it before. So in other words, you're using the primary sources. And so I thought, I was director of education at the time for the community. And I thought, well, I'll try to do something that's maybe practical for the community, like Overbrook or something like that we haven't really had a history written. But then one day I was walking through, and for those of you who've haven't been to the Mother House, we have a heritage room, and it shows pictures and instances of our community's history. And there's one pillar, and it's closest to the library. Y'all can look at it when you go home. But it shows the sisters' education, and it tells about this interesting institution we had of the St. Cecilia Normal School. So I looked at that and I thought, well, you know what? That's an interesting topic that I don't think we know much about. And sure enough, Sister Rosemarie Mascherano wrote a history of the congregation in the 1980s. And that's the last formally published history we have of the congregation. And in it, she devotes about 3 paragraphs to mentioning the normal school. So there's really very little we know about it. And then there's this little paragraph in the heritage room. So that, I think that'd be a neat opportunity for me. I'm studying at Catholic University of America. The normal school was affiliated with the Catholic University of America. Seems like a providential thing for me to study this. And I think it really was. I think I was really led to it. And it was a tremendous opportunity for me. I want to, in our brief time together, just share with you some of my research about this normal school. First of all, what was it? What purpose did it serve? In what way was it of any value? And how did it prepare the way for Aquinas College? And then perhaps even more so for us to consider what foundations were laid in the normal school that form the edifice for the mission of Aquinas College. So as Aquinas College celebrates its 60th anniversary, it's a real joy for me to share with you what came before Aquinas, why it matters, and what we can learn from it today. And to do that, though, I want to start just briefly with something that's familiar to us all, but it gives us context. And that's just starting with the Dominican Order in general. So we know that St. Dominic's vision was for an order of preachers. Then it received official approbation from the church in 1216. He desired an order that was wholly dedicated to preaching and the salvation of souls. He established as essential means for attaining this mission the observance of the evangelical counsels: poverty, chastity, obedience, private and liturgical prayer, a regular life with monastic practices, and study of sacred truth. He exhorted that the Dominicans that their study should be assiduous and ordered to the sole end that they might be useful to the souls of their neighbors. Founded in 1860, the Congregation of St. Cecilia has been associated with schools from its inception. We know that 4 sisters came from Somerset, Ohio in August of 1860 at the request of Bishop James Whalen, who was the second bishop of Nashville. They were to establish an academy for girls, later named St. Cecilia Academy. He desired that this academy might spread the faith far. The early history of the congregation tells us of the high standards of the school and the regular study and preparation of the sisters for their teaching. Mother Frances Walsh, who's one of the foundresses, records that no detail connected with the school was deemed unimportant, nor was its reputation, present or future, for a moment lost from sight or otherwise neglected. Mother Ann Hanlon, also another early superior, was recognized for her vigilance on behalf of everything that could advance the cause of the school and enhance its reputation. And even in the present, the constitutions of the congregation state that the sisters strive that their schools be academically superior, the instructors skilled in teaching the fundamental arts and disciplines, and the students led to love knowledge and seek academic achievement. Mother Ann desired that the sisters would always be students as well as teachers. It's also said of her that after the direct service of God in prayer, she held the educational apostolate as of preeminent importance. Next to her heart, she cherished the progress of the school and the efficiency of its teachers. She kept the sisters up to the highest standards as teachers. And an 1889 advertising brochure for St. Cecilia Academy says that the education of youth is the special calling of the Dominican sisters. To qualify themselves for this high duty is their constant aim. So it's clear that the commitment to the quality of the teachers has been a hallmark of St. Cecilia congregation. And as the community grew and accepted invitations to serve in other parts of the country and in different schools, the education of the sisters continued to receive careful attention. The Catholic school system in this country closely followed the public school system in its methods of preparing teachers for schools. So for instance, the earliest days of the country, aspiring teachers were required to pass examinations by local boards of education in order to teach. That eventually transferred into, at the diocesan level, you would be examined by a diocesan board, and that was your qualification to be a teacher. By 1910, it was becoming more common in some states to have a high school diploma as a requirement to be a teacher. In the 1920s, it then became more common for having a normal certificate. A normal certificate is essentially a teaching certificate. So you wonder about the word normal. So a normal school is something that developed in Europe and is also in the United States, and it's a teacher training institute. So a normal course of studies is a 2-year program post-high school where you had content, but also pedagogy to prepare you to be a teacher. So starting in the 1920s, it was becoming more common for states to require that you'd gone through a normal school program and that you had a certificate so that you were certified to teach. And then in the 1940s, it became more common then to have a bachelor's degree. But it's interesting, even in our own congregation of St. Cecilia in the 1960s, we were removing some of the sisters from the teaching apostolate to allow them to complete their bachelor's degree, because it was not common necessarily to have that level of education at that point. So it's good for us to realize that and to be grateful. We take educational attainment for granted today in a lot of ways. So since women religious were the majority of the faculty in Catholic schools, they made great sacrifices to meet the same standards as the public school systems. So prior to the 1920s, the most common way for sisters to be prepared to be teachers was really through apprenticeship or a craft system. This was the case for the Nashville Dominicans as well. An early unpublished history of the community tells that the sisters spent summer months preparing for their classes, with master teachers providing instruction in the various subjects. The older sisters instructing the younger ones. This is not our community, but a picture of the IHM congregation. Sister Reginald Gorman, who was a directress of St. Cecilia Academy, set up a system for the sisters to be placed in various groupings for formal study and examinations on elementary and secondary school subjects. Examinations by state boards of education were common for those who wished to be certified to teach in public schools. So, like other religious congregations, the Sisters of St. Cecilia proactively prepared their teachers for these examinations, should they ever be required for Catholic school teachers. Starting in the 1920s, religious communities became increasingly concerned that Catholic school teachers would soon be required to have state certificates or normal school diplomas. And so they began sending their sisters out to study at universities. But there were a lot of challenges they faced. For one thing, canon law permitted religious priests to study at secular universities, but there was no guidance for sisters. So consequently, the practice was for superiors of sisters' communities to obtain permission from their bishop. And so in our archives, we have many examples of letters where the superiors are writing to the bishop to ask permission for the sisters to take classes at George Peabody School for Teachers, which later became Vanderbilt, because they were taking it from a secular institution, so they had to have permission. But there were other challenges. We know that, for instance, sisters in general received extremely low stipends for their teaching in the schools, and in some places they received no payment at all. So very few communities could actually afford to send their sisters to colleges or universities for formal studies. And the Congregation of St. Cecilia in particular was additionally had the challenge of being very small, located in a region of the country where there were very few Catholics and hence few vocations. But despite these challenges, some of the Sisters of St. Cecilia were able to engage in formal studies in the early 1900s. But the challenge was that not all the sisters were able to work towards college degrees. And in fact, like much of the general population, not all sisters had even completed high school before entering the community. At the time, there were no Catholic colleges in Tennessee that admitted women, and the cost of enrolling all sisters in college programs was prohibitive. So in the 1920s, the community came to a critical juncture. The primary apostolate of the congregation was education. And there was increasing concern that teachers needed certification. They could neither afford to send all sisters to study, nor could they afford to begin their own college, as some larger religious communities did. Their only hope was to begin their own normal school and to award their own normal diplomas. But they could only do that if they were accredited. And lacking the resources to be accredited on their own, they found a more immediate solution. They would ask the Catholic University of America to give college credit for the classes they offered at the Mother House. So why Catholic University? So first of all, the Catholic University of America was founded in Washington, D.C. in 1887 as a graduate institution, and it was for men. Starting in 1911, the university offered a summer session for sisters and lay women. This developed into what was this Catholic Sisters College, which was an affiliate of the university and could offer degrees to women even when they were not formally admitted to the university. The university didn't admit women for graduate study until 1928 and 1950 for undergraduate study. So through the Catholic Sisters College, if any of you know the DC area, this is actually about where the metro is right now. So it was a whole campus, and sisters from around the country came to the Catholic Sisters College. The specific aim of the Catholic Sisters College was to support Catholic schools through the formation of sister teachers because of this challenge of finding places for sisters to study. Our sisters began studying at the Catholic Sisters College in 1911, so very early on. From their studies there, they learned of the community's program of affiliation. From its founding, the Catholic University of America was seen to have a role in supporting all Catholic educational institutions in the United States. In his letter granting approval to the statutes of Catholic University, Pope Leo had encouraged the bishops to work out a program of affiliation. He said, "We urge you to be sure that your seminaries, colleges, and other Catholic institutions are affiliated with the university as suggested in its statutes." The first institutions to affiliate with the Catholic University were seminaries. So even prior to the opening of the university, religious congregations of men began to establish houses around the university. in order to attain uniformity of teaching in the ecclesiastical schools in the country. So, for instance, the Dominicans, the Paulists, the Marists, Holy Cross Brothers, all affiliated with Catholic University in its very earliest years. As the time went on, the university also developed a program of affiliation for Catholic colleges and universities, as well as for high schools. And in fact, St. Cecilia Academy was affiliated with CUA in 1915. Affiliation with the university was essentially an early form of accreditation. It invited the university to serve as an outside party that helped the school to fulfill its mission and to have an excellent institution that was according to generally accepted standards, and in this case, an education inspired by a Catholic philosophy of education. In 1921, Sister Aloysius Evans became the first Nashville Dominican to graduate from Catholic University with a Bachelor of Arts degree. Now, she's 36 years old in this picture. When she graduated with her bachelor's degree, she was actually 51. Because at the time, again, 1920s, you're sending sisters to college campuses. Communities made a decision to send more mature members, not younger ones. They're living outside of the congregation. They're engaged in formal studies and in a different schedule. And so they sent more mature members. And from that experience, she became ambitious to have a normal school at the mother house that could be staffed by the sisters of the congregation for the training of the young sisters in the community. The superior of the community and several other sisters shared this same dream. And so, hence, at that time, more sisters were sent to study for degrees because they needed to have degrees themselves to be teachers for the fellow sisters. And that was to prepare future faculty for the desired normal school. Several sisters were assigned to study at Catholic University America and to subsequent graduate studies at George Peabody College for Teachers in Nashville, which again became affiliated with Vanderbilt later on. In 1927, Sister Anne Frances Semmes and Sister Miriam Walsh became the first two members of the community to receive master's degrees from Peabody. In the summer of 1927, Mother Pius Doherty, who was then superior of the congregation, gathered at the mother house with a group of 12 sisters who all had the necessary degrees to staff a normal school. So they finally got up to 12 that had enough degrees, including Sister Aloysius Evans, who had zealously promoted the idea for several years. The group elected Sister Miriam Walsh to serve as the director of the St. Cecilia Normal School. And they gave her a twofold task: to organize a summer session of studies for the next summer and to negotiate with the Catholic University of America to affiliate the program of studies that they would offer. So the 1928 session was also intended to offer courses for the sisters who had not completed their high school requirements as well. This plan to establish a normal school for the community and to prepare sisters to staff it is quite extraordinary when one considers the size of St. Cecilia congregation. Located in the South, where Catholics were not numerous, the congregation has historically been small. At the time of these community discussions in 1927, the community had fewer than 100 members and staffed 12 schools. Larger communities with more resources had established community normal schools, but this small community, located where Catholics and vocations were scarce, still endeavored to provide for the needs of teacher education so that its schools might be academically superior. In the summer of 1928, the St. Cecilia Normal School offered 7 courses. Again, there's only 100 sisters in the whole community, but they offered 7 classes in the summer. In addition, they had 6 high school courses that they offered that summer for the sisters who hadn't completed high school. The General Council decided that sisters who completed the high school course of studies could be granted the St. Cecilia Academy diploma. High school courses continued each summer until all sisters had completed the required coursework, which happened sometime in the mid-1940s. Sisters were still taking high school classes. After having completed the first successful summer session of the St. Cecilia Normal School in 1928, Sister Miriam promptly went to work on her second task, and she departed for Washington, D.C. in January of 1929. A letter of the secretary for the Committee of Affiliation at the Catholic University wrote to the vice rector and said that Sister Miriam of St. Cecilia Normal School, Nashville, Tennessee, came to the university and consulted Dr. DeFerrari concerning the possibilities of having a normal school conducted by the Dominican Sisters of Nashville, Tennessee, affiliated with the Catholic University. Dr. DeFerrari was at that time the director of the summer program at the Catholic University. So a number of sisters in our community had been his pupil. He was also on the committee of affiliation. So Sister Miriam and several of the other sisters had him for classes. In response to Sister Miriam's visit, Father McVeigh communicated that the university didn't have any formal program to affiliate normal schools or junior colleges. And so they didn't have any plans made. So since guidelines for normal schools weren't available, Sister Miriam wasn't going to take no for an answer. And so she said, could we be tentatively affiliated? And the committee affiliation agreed to grant tentative affiliation to St. Cecilia Normal School, which is astonishing, again, because other communities had asked the same thing of Catholic University, and they said no. But Sister Miriam wouldn't take no for an answer. So tenacity is in our heritage. So essentially, it was so the credits that they received through the normal school courses would be recognized by Catholic University of America as of credit-bearing value towards the academic degrees of undergraduate collegiate rank offered by the university. He promised that he'd send her some application papers and guidance in the coming months. But when the application papers did not arrive in the time they were expected to be there, Sister Miriam bypassed him and went directly to the rector, who was the president. So when she wasn't getting what she wanted fast enough, she went directly to the president. So the rector replied to her request by arranging for a meeting with her and for the entire committee on affiliation. Dr. DeFerrari met with Sister Miriam in advance of the meeting and greeted her with a humorous, but you're getting ambitious down there. Sister Miriam also met in advance with the rector, who gave his support in a private meeting. In an interview years later, she recounted a story related to her that after the sisters had left the meeting with the affiliation committee, which evidently had not been meeting for some time, the vice rector said, well, one thing the ladies did, they stirred up this affiliation committee. Due to Sister Miriam's initiative and persistence, the St. Cecilia Normal School became the first normal school to be affiliated with the Catholic University of America. Since the university accepted the credits that they earned through the normal school, the sisters' coursework was then transferable to other Catholic and non-Catholic universities so they could complete their bachelor's degree at other institutions. So imagine the cost savings for that. They get their first 2 years of college essentially free on their own labor at their own house. So in a short time, a great deal had been accomplished. The committee of affiliation was perhaps more aware of the significance of this than the sisters were themselves. So Father McVeigh, who was the head of the committee at one point, attempted to convey this to Sister Miriam in a letter in 1930. And he said, I quote, I realize that there seemed to have been a great deal of delay in this matter. But if you stop and consider the fact that the affiliation of your normal school is a test problem, you will then understand why it is that the committee is wise in going slowly. If you look back over the letters of the past year, you'll notice that each step was taken cautiously and that many a detail had to be gradually fitted into the workings of the plan as tentatively adopted by your community. Hasty and hurried decisions may thwart what otherwise may be the beginnings of a plan for summer schoolwork that has untold advantages for other communities and their teaching members. And so he requested patience as the committee worked out the details related to the affiliation, since this was an untried relationship. Months later, he even went further, stating, I hope that out of this experiment of the tentative affiliation of St. Cecilia, something of a very permanent and helpful nature, not only to your community, but to all teaching communities will emerge. The files and correspondence of these years demonstrate a solidification of the requirements from Catholic University and growth in the understanding of the nature of the normal school affiliation. We have some files in the archives of St. Cecilia Congregation. Sister Miriam was a meticulous note keeper. And so for every single summer, she has, first of all the correspondences in there, but also lists of what was being offered for each summer in coursework. So you can't see this, but I'll just read it to you, but this is, for instance, the summer of 1939. And you have a survey of English literature, college composition, educational tests and measures, children's literature, school music, journalism, classroom organization and control. They also have high school classes at the bottom. Sister Marie Delordes was taking geometry and English too. So they were still, again, having simultaneously the high school and the college courses taking place. And so you can see that, again, you can't see it very well, but you've got listed then. So this is the summer schedule from 7:50 to 8:40 every morning. They have the survey of English literature taught by Sister Ursula. These are the sisters in the classes. Children's literature. Pretty extraordinary. When you consider, again, the size of the community and the number of sisters taking coursework, it's pretty amazing. In 1938, Dr. DeFerrari became the chairman of the committee. And as part of the review of the program, it was decided the committee would conduct official visits to the affiliated colleges and normal schools for the purposes of inspection. As requested, Sister Miriam completed a report on the St. Cecilia Normal School in preparation for the visit. And again, it's very similar to what we would do for an accreditation report today. In this report, she explains the founding purpose of the school, which again, you can't read, but I'll read to you. She says that the St. Cecilia Normal School was open for the following reasons. A, to give the young sisters of the community an opportunity to pursue studies in religion, psychology, and education with Catholic instructors. And then she has a note in parentheses, there is not a Catholic college in Nashville or vicinity. Hence, prior to 1928, when the normal school was open, the sisters did their college work at the George Peabody College for teachers. As the sisters are not now allowed and have never been allowed to study philosophy or psychology at Peabody College, they were compelled to postpone these courses until they had an opportunity to attend a Catholic college. So this, and again, enabled them to take those kind of classes here. And B, the second reason she lists for the normal school was for financial reasons. The community of St. Cecilia is small and resources are rather limited. If the summer normal school were not maintained at the mother house, a majority of the teaching sisters could not advance in their professional work. Over the years, that first goal listed has remained consistent to give the younger sisters and the community an opportunity to pursue courses. But the second was modified to a more specific end to train the young sisters of the congregation to become efficient Catholic teachers. No degrees were issued by the normal school, but after completing those 2 summers of courses, the sisters completed their degrees at other institutions. These credits from the normal school were accepted for their state teaching certification. Sister Miriam notes that on average, 50 sisters attended the normal school classes in the summers. And again, the community is about 100 sisters and about half are in school. What makes this extraordinary is the size of the community. So for instance, in 1938, there were 119 sisters in the community, yet of these, 50 were in classes during the summer, with 7 additional sisters serving as instructors and 2 sisters as librarians. Despite these small numbers, they held 10 college courses plus high school courses that summer. That's a list. Again, you can't see it, but it's 51 sisters, and it lists by each one of them what classes they're taking. So Sister Mary Ambrose is in classroom. They could take up to 3 classes in the course of the summer, similar to what we do today. In 1939, Dr. DeFerrari came for an official visit to follow for an inspection on the report and to offer his recommendations. His report called for the working out of a curriculum, an improved library, better keeping of academic records, instructor training standards, and a typed catalog. He also noted that the Committee on Affiliation would provide Catholic University diplomas for 50 cents each to graduates of the St. Cecilia Normal School. The Annals of St. Cecilia Academy and Mother House for 1939 note that the summer session concluded on August 3rd of that year, with 5 sisters receiving certificates as the first graduates of the St. Cecilia Normal School. And so they had a program for the day. They began with a hymn, Come Holy Ghost. Mother Annunziata gave a interesting talk to the sisters. They sang another hymn and the diplomas were passed out. The program from the day is the same that was continued over the next 30 years. Beginning in 1939, St. Cecilia Normal School classes were also offered during the academic year in addition to the summers. So the sisters had Saturday classes too. Instructors included sisters of the congregation, priests, and other lay and religious instructors qualified in their fields. One of my absolute favorites from the early years was a course in journalism that was taught by one of the journalists from the Nashville paper. And it talks about part of his objectives for the course was to teach sisters to do press releases for their schools. Since the normal school operated at the mother house of St. Cecilia Congregation, which still housed St. Cecilia Academy until 1957, the sisters in the normal school had the benefit of doing their practice teaching in the elementary grades at St. Cecilia Academy. And they were under the care of Sister Miriam, who was the community supervisor of schools. The St. Cecilia Normal School students used the St. Cecilia Academy library, and they had a special section of books reserved for their use and a special librarian appointed during the summer months. Since the St. Cecilia Normal School diploma was accepted for teacher certification by the state of Tennessee, the requirements for the curriculum were revised from time to time to accommodate new regulations from the state, as well as the needs of a particular group of sisters and the institutions which they would go for their continued study. Toward the latter years of the normal school, Sister Miriam's correspondence more readily indicates her understanding the significance of the St. Cecilia Normal School and the history of the education of American women religious. In 1959, when sending Dr. DeFerrari a regularly scheduled report to the committee, she included a chapter from a master's thesis that had been written by a member of the community, Sister Marie Adelaide Hovius, which chronicled the history of the St. Cecilia Normal School. This thesis, which traced the history of the schools of St. Cecilia Congregation, is particularly valuable today for its documentation of interviews that were conducted with many sisters long since deceased, most of whom had known personally either Mother Ann or Mother Frances. The interviews with Sister Miriam for the chapter on the normal school are enlightening and providing some of the information on this venture, which would not otherwise have been known. And that thesis is found in our library here. Dr. DeFerrari responded months later after reading that chapter of the history. Oh, sorry, I forgot to show you. This is the diploma that they would receive. So in the education office, Sister John Mary is the director of education, but in the education office today, in some of the sisters' files, you can see their normal school diploma from the Catholic University of America. So Dr. DeFerrari, again, he read the history that Sister Miriam sent him. This is 1960, and he said, "I've at last been able to go over your material, especially the sketch of your normal school. I've read this with a great deal of pleasure. You realize, I'm sure, that this is a kind of forerunner of the sister formation movement, and of course, to a long line of novitiate affiliates by the Catholic University of America. As you have said, it really made history." In her 1959 report sent to the Committee on Affiliation, Sister Miriam wrote that plans are being considered for the opening of a junior college on the same campus as the new high school. The normal school will then merge with the junior college. The General Council had approved of this plan in December of 1958. And the sisters had sought permission from the Bishop of Nashville as early as 1951. During the 1960 site visit of the Catholic University of America Affiliation Committee to the St. Cecilia Normal School, Mother Joan of Arc and Sister Miriam elaborated on their plans of opening a junior college for lay women on their existing Harding Road campus, which already was the site of Overbrook School and the recently relocated St. Cecilia Academy. In the fall of 1961, Aquinas Junior College opened to its first students, which included 50 nursing students from St. Thomas School of Nursing next door, 13 sisters, and 5 lay women. All the sisters were as the sisters were in various stages of their normal school training, they were granted the St. Cecilia Normal Diploma up through 1963. The closing of the St. Cecilia Normal School meant that young sisters entering the congregation would attend Aquinas Junior College and receive an Associate of Arts degree for their first 2 years of study. With this degree, the sisters or lay students could receive a 2-year teaching certificate from the state of Tennessee that could be renewed as needed until a bachelor's degree was earned. The transition from the St. Cecilia Normal School to Aquinas Junior College was the fruition of an original community ambition to provide a place for the education of its youngest members. Yet now, the congregation would not only be educating its own, but fulfilling an evangelizing mission of providing a Catholic higher education for the wider community, as well as granting its own degrees. Sister Miriam expressed this best in a letter to Dr. DeFerrari. Your kind words of encouragement, appreciation of my work in the past 33 years were gratefully received. With the transfer of the affiliation of the St. Cecilia Normal School to Aquinas Junior College, I shall have the privilege of saying mission accomplished. At the time of this 1962 correspondence, Sister Miriam Walsh was 76 years old, and Dr. DeFerrari was 72. They had worked on this project of the St. Cecilia Normal School together for 34 years. Sister Miriam was associated with the Aquinas Junior College again in 1970, when the college applied for its own charter and established a new board of directors as part of their SACS accreditation. Sister Miriam was elected for a 2-year term on the new board at the age of 83, a position which she held till her death the following year. Dr. DeFerrari retired as director of the program of affiliation in 1966 and died in 1969, and Sister Miriam died in 1971. So I want to circle back to two great pioneers of the St. Cecilia Normal School, the one who conceived of the idea and the one who built the program and established it. As you recall, Sister Aloysius Evans was the first sister of the congregation to graduate from this Catholic University of America. And she first promoted the idea of the congregation establishing a normal school affiliated with the university. In the summer of 1927, when the group of 12 sisters gathered to plan this first summer school session for the next summer, Sister Aloysius was present. Yet she contracted pneumonia a few months later and died, and never taught in the normal school that she had so greatly desired for the community. However, when Aquinas Junior College opened and the library was established, Mother Joan of Arc had placed in the new library a bust of Shakespeare, which had been a gift to Sister Aloysius by the St. Cecilia Academy class of 1914. And that was put in the Aquinas library as a memento of Sister Aloysius's dream for the normal school, which was now fully realized in the new college. I don't know where that bust is right now, but I did find it when I was here, and it was in this building a couple of years ago. But there's a podium and it says class of 1914, and there's a bust of Shakespeare. And there's even a note on there about Sister Aloysius Evans. So it's in the library. Okay, well, you can go visit it today. And at the same time, the story of the St. Cecilia Normal School is inseparable from the figure of Sister Miriam Walsh. The correspondence and actions of Sister Miriam, as recounted in this paper, reveal a personality that's at once exacting and direct, yet decidedly loyal and kind. She was described as short of stature and reserved, always ready to help those who needed her assistance, and inclined to give forth a hearty laugh. After entering the community in 1907, following her high school graduation, Sister Miriam began teaching very soon. Over the years, she taught everything from 3rd grade through high school: English, math, Latin, chemistry, and religion in 6 schools. And in 2 of these schools, she served simultaneously as principal and teacher. From 1928 to the final graduating class of 1963, she served as founder, director, instructor of the Normal School of St. Cecilia, a total of 35 years. She was appointed the community's first supervisor of schools in 1933, which would be today what we call the director of education, Sir John Mary's position. So she was the first one. And she held that position for 31 years. Her necrology, kept in the archives of the congregation, states that she had a reputation among her students as an efficient and demanding teacher whom they all respected. Her exactness and her kindness were experienced by those whose classrooms she visited as supervisor. The author of the necrology considered Sister Miriam's greatest achievement to have been the establishment of the St. Cecilia Normal School. She says that Sister Miriam endeared herself to the sisters by her keen interest in their studies and the efforts she made to provide educational opportunities for them. In addition to these educational contributions, Sister Miriam Walsh served as the community's first recognized historian. Over the 40 years, she served as Secretary General of St. Cecilia Congregation, during which time she began the archives of the congregation. So she's the first one that for 60 years, the congregation didn't have any organized records. So we don't have a lot of early data on the congregation because of that, but she started it all. She cataloged the materials from the earliest days of the community. In this capacity, she started also keeping educational and other records for each sister. For the Diamond Jubilee of the congregation in 1935, she published a brief history of the community and its works, and y'all can get that out of the library. But prior to that time, one other history had been written by one of the foundresses of the congregation, Mother Frances Walsh. However, and we take this for granted, but that first history written by Mother Frances was not formally published and made available to the sisters until 1969. And that was at the time of the Vatican II renewal. Consequently, Sister Miriam's history of the congregation was the first work distributed to the sisters that contained the stories of the founding and the early days. Sister Miriam Walsh may not be remembered by anyone outside of the community, and even within the community, she is little known by her current members because her vast contributions belong to an era before most of us. While her efforts made history, a study of the early days of the program of affiliation at Catholic University of America failed to identify her accomplishment, save through one tiny footnote. Yet in this hiddenness, she best manifests the congregation in which she served for so many years. It is said of Mother Frances Walsh, one of the four foundresses of St. Cecilia Congregation, that in her recording of the history of the congregation, her varied achievements are recorded as if hidden behind the image of the community. It is not really she who appears great, but the community. Truly, the same could be said for Sister Miriam Walsh, who is a pioneer of sister formation and a woman of great gifts and accomplishments, whose achievements are hidden, yet contribute to the rich patrimony of St. Cecilia Congregation of Aquinas College. In 1930, Father Leo McVeigh, who was secretary for the Committee of Affiliation at Catholic University, had written to Sister Miriam, "I hope that out of the experiment of this tentative affiliation of St. Cecilia's Normal School, something of a very permanent and helpful nature, not only to your community, but to all our teaching communities will emerge. While it is difficult to know the full impact of these early negotiations for other communities, we do know that many junior colleges and teacher training institutes did affiliate with the Catholic University following the solidification of the program requirements. For instance, in 1954, there were 43 religious communities that had normal schools affiliated with Catholic University. Yet we know that something permanent and helpful did indeed occur for St. Cecilia Congregation. In all, 118 sisters graduated from the St. Cecilia Normal School and received their teaching certificates. And for the sisters, and many of you may know, Sister Mary Lewis was actually in the last class of the graduates of the St. Cecilia Normal School. The story of St. Cecilia Normal School and ultimately of Aquinas College is one of love and sacrifice, of vision and perseverance. We see how one sister teacher community handled formation for their members, but we also see the often hidden story of the many sacrifices endured by religious sisters of this country, who filled for the zeal for the spread of the gospel, strove to make themselves more fit for their ministry. In particular, this is a story of the life of a small Southern Dominican congregation that had a dream and strove mightily for its accomplishment for the glory of God and the good of souls. May we follow in their footsteps today and continue in their legacy of faith and excellence, of perseverance, of courage, of humility, grateful for what we've received and which is now ours to further and pass on to the next generation. Thank you for your time. And I apologize, I went a little over, but maybe I can have one question if anybody has a question. And if nobody has any, no worries. But it's a great story. Glad to be able to share it with you today. And look for that bust of Shakespeare. Y'all have a great rest of your day and a great St. Thomas